We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ango Show. It is February 10th, 2025. My name is Zango. This is Billy TKO. And holy shit, what a weekend in professional wrestling.
Oh, dude, we had a hectic weekend.
Crazy.
I felt like it was so busy, but like there was so much just going on.
Yeah, it was probably the most eventful weekend for professional wrestling. Truth be told, man, like I definitely, it was funny because we do the show Monday through Friday, and you could tell like some days you just have a lot of stuff to talk about, and some days it's just more casual and chill and calm. Right. But this one, man, it's interesting because WWE, I mean, it really kicked off with SmackDown. It was a good episode. And then of course you get the news of releases. Then Saturday comes around, there's more releases. Then you get a great episode of AEW Collision. And then obviously we had Super Bowl Sunday this past weekend, which, I mean, if anybody follows me on Twitter, I didn't give a shit about because the Lions weren't there. But even somehow, some way, pro wrestling continues to be involved. Tons and tons of pro wrestlers were in attendance at the Super Bowl.
Yes,
we know Britt Baker was there, the Bella Twins, Swerve Strickland, Kip Sabian, Penelope Ford, Undertaker, Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon were at the Super Bowl. And we're obviously going to talk a little bit about that because it is very relevant to the world of professional wrestling today, especially when you hear about the Janelle Grant lawsuit that is currently ongoing. The Chiefs got absolutely spanked.
Thank God.
The Eagles won.
Anybody but the Chiefs, bro.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar had his halftime performance.
People will say what they want about that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own opinion.
It was great.
Yeah, I thought it was ass.
That's fine. That's fine. But as a hip hop head, I loved it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, it was just such a big weekend, and obviously, WWE was dominating the headlines with the releases, which obviously we're going to talk about. And then today, if you guys aren't subscribed to my channel, you may have missed it, but an AEW star is gone from the company. We all kind of thought it would be happening. We thought it was going to happen years ago. It didn't happen years ago. It happened as of last night. He became a free agent. And I do want to talk a little bit more in depth on the live show about that. We'll get Billy's reaction. If you guys want to support the show, there's multiple ways you guys can do that. Obviously, the easiest way is by just simply clicking subscribe and liking the stream. Obviously, I am giving away a World Championship replica belt if we hit 100,000 subscribers. This past weekend, the Ango Show hit 79,000 subscribers. So
look at this man do 100,000.
Dude,
I know we can.
I'm dying to hit 100K. I want that plaque, bro. I want that plaque. So
that's the goal for this year. I need 10. He needs 100.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you guys obviously aren't subscribed to Billy, you should probably click that subscribe button for Billy as well. We are live across multiple platforms today: YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, as well as Billy's channel. This is the real ultimate simulcast. It's not like being on TBS and HBO Max. It's better than that. Obviously, you know what I mean.
I know what you say. I know. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah. But of course, if you guys want to support the chat just a little bit extra, you could do a super chat. And we do have a super chat goal. It is officially active. You could do a super chat. It guarantees that your questions will be read on the stream. And of course, we can't forget about the memberships as well. We got tons of new members over the weekend, which was interesting because sometimes I feel like people miss that opportunity to do it during the stream and they get their shout out. That obviously didn't happen. So shout out to everybody who became a member over the weekend. Those who are rocking with the live stream, appreciate you guys so much. Shout out to Justin Kennington in the chat. Shout out to Darth Bane, Kevin Schiffman, Todd Crow, just a few of the members that are in the chat today. Appreciate you guys. Billy, I think we should start off with the budget cuts. I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we got to talk about the releases. Obviously, I've shared my opinions over the span of the last few videos. It was a massive, massive week for my channel. And, just having that kind of coverage and sharing my opinions, I feel like sometimes people get a little annoyed with me because this is the time where I do criticize WWE consistently. It doesn't matter who's in charge, Vince or Triple H. We'll go through the names momentarily, but
Yeah.
what was your reaction, obviously, after SmackDown, just kind of seeing all of this stuff take over social media?
You know, it's funny. I was out to dinner and you texted me, and I think it was about the AEW star and that whole situation that happened that you had covered, that AEW star being released. You texted me that, and then later in the night, I got home from dinner and I went and scrolled Twitter and I seen all these different names. I'm like, yo, what is going on? And I texted you. I said, what did I miss? And my instant reaction is just, holy shit, right? Like, number one, you feel for the people that it happened to, and you think about their families and stuff. But another thing that I thought about was how strong the wrestling world right now is. So you're hopeful that all these people are going to land perfectly fine on their feet. And it just overall, WWE does this all the time, right? When they release people, they release a lot of them, and they do it in such an overwhelming fashion that it's almost hard to take in.
Yeah.
That's just what WWE has been known to do. And whether it's under Triple H, whether it's under Vince, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, WWE is a business, and they're going to continue to do what businesses do.
Yeah.
And this is just them doing what they do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's tough because I feel like I get criticized for this, but I mean, if you go back and watch, I mean, for multiple years, I always say, like, you can't justify it, because at the end of the day, it is a business. They are running a business, right? People lose jobs all the time. If you think WWE cutting 10 talent is that big of an issue, I mean, there's corporations who are laying off thousands and thousands and thousands. It's not apples to apples comparison, but this does happen with larger corporations and larger businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I think what bothers me the most about the releases, though, is that sometimes I think people get released and they're never really given a chance.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I think that's where people kind of criticize me a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's where I'm a little bit more critical. Like, Blair Davenport was somebody where initially when SmackDown was going 3 hours, hey, this is the land of opportunity for SmackDown superstars. And I look at the SmackDown superstars and I see Isla Dawn, Blair Davenport, and Giovanni Vinci being released. And I'm like, okay, these are 3 people that could benefit from SmackDown going 3 hours.
For sure.
And so that's where I get very, very bothered, right? And listen, like, I'm never, look, like I said, you can't justify it. People are losing their jobs. I don't think it's fair at all. I don't think it's right. And it sucks that it happens, but I understand why it happens. I don't agree with it, though. I will never agree with it. I don't think it's fair to sit there and advocate for people getting released. And the worst part about it too is the subject matter always becomes budget cuts.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, I think that's such a cheap way of just letting talent go.
It is. It's such a cheap excuse, right? Because we know WWE doesn't have budget cuts at the end of the day, dude. I mean, they're profitable all around the board.
Yeah.
So this is just a way of being like, hey, you might as well just say the loud or the quiet part loud. It's like, hey, we're just not utilizing this talent. We don't see any plans with them.
Yeah.
So WWE just tries to cover it up and tries to make themselves look better. It's what they've always done. And again, it's something that they're just naturally going to continue to do.
Yeah. And I think it's really tough, man, because it's like, you look at the list and there's some people who genuinely just didn't get over and may have not improved at WWE's rate. I think, like, obviously I have a little bit of a bias towards AOP, and I did mention this on Twitter. Like, I obviously have a little bit of a bias with AOP. But even that too, it's like, man, like they've had so many opportunities and they really couldn't get over. Now the conversation then turns into, well, is it their fault or is it WWE's fault? And I'm always under the belief it's always both sides.
Yeah,
it's how WWE presents you, but also at the same time too, it's what are you doing to get yourself over when you're in the ring?
Yeah.
And this is where it obviously becomes a little controversial, but yeah, maybe the Final Testament for AOP wasn't the best choice for them, but at the same time too, when you look at the Final Testament, who was really the star of that?
It was always carrying Cross.
It was always carrying Cross.
Yeah.
And so as much as I like their presentation and I like them as a group, I can't sit here and be like, wow, AOP and Final Testament makes the most sense.
With somebody like AOP, I think it kind of shows you how WWE, and I'm going to criticize WWE here. It shows how they choose to utilize their tag teams. You know, AOP, if you look back at in the NXT days, right? Their NXT run was amazing, and the way that they were utilized there as a tag team was phenomenal. Their presentation was great. Everything across the board for them was amazing. But they come up to the main roster where tag teams aren't highlighted as much, and then they don't get this opportunity to shine. You know, and there are numerous tag teams like the Champions currently, the War Raiders, that could have went on and had great feuds with AOP. But again, we're just dropping the ball continuously.
That goes to show you that tag team wrestling will never always be a priority.
No, and that's the problem with it. It's not. It's just not
for sure. Because I feel like you could have moved AOP to a different show, or you could have put them back in NXT if you wanted. And really, what really bothers me about it though is like they really aren't. They've always been the extra muscle. Like as much as I loved AOP when they were with Seth Rollins. And again, I say this with a little bit of bias, but I got to witness an Albanian wrestler show up on television and actually cut promos in Albanian, which I have never seen that before. So obviously, having that Albanian background, naturally seeing an Albanian wrestler, I thought it was cool. Maybe people at the time didn't, but of course, I felt like Akam and Razar being with Seth Rollins was a cool thing. It was short-lived, but they were the bodies. They were the big bodies for Seth. And I feel like that's kind of how it's always been for AOP, is that they've always been the big bodies for somebody else, and they never really had that chance to be their tag team, their own like unit. Yeah. However, when you see that tag team wrestling isn't a big priority, and then you look at when tag team wrestling is a priority, obviously, who is Triple H pushing? The big tag teams or the guys who can really work? And that's the thing nobody ever actually wants to admit. But WWE's focus on the tag team division is the athletic groups. The War Raiders are incredibly gifted in the ring. So the War Raiders obviously hold the belts. DIY, Pretty Deadly, Motor City Machine Guns, the Street Profits. Those are all groups that have done really good character work, but can also go in the ring. Yeah. So when we look towards WrestleMania, you know, you kind of have to look at what they're building currently on TV, and obviously AOP just doesn't fit that. No. So like I understand both sides of the coin, honestly.
Of course, and you have to. And then you take a look at somebody like Giovanni Vinci, right? Who was just really never given a chance after Imperium. And that one actually destroys my like soul, because I felt he was just them not capitalizing on that Imperium story between Kaiser and him kills me every day, because that just shows like, oh no, you just didn't care about that guy, because anybody else, you would have told that story.
Yeah, he must have pissed somebody off backstage.
He had to have.
I don't know if this is true, obviously, and I'm not one for like the internet gossip in this kind of regard, because it touches on personal stuff. But when I made my video on it, a lot of people, and I seen the same sentiment echoed on social media, but a lot of people were spewing comments about Giovanni Vinci trying to hook up with Tiffany Stratton or something. Like he was making a pass at her or something. And obviously everybody knows Ludwig and Tiffany. Yeah. So a lot of people are under the belief that there was like some legitimate problems between him and Ludwig. Which again, that's internet gossip. I don't know if that's ever true. I'm not using that as a way to make personal claims about somebody, but that's kind of the reaction I've seen about Giovanni Vinci. And really what kind of sucks about that is I agree. I think Giovanni Vinci is incredibly talented. The Playboy rich gimmick could have worked out extremely well. The writing was on the wall, even when he came into SmackDown losing to Apollo Crews in seconds, you know, and I was one of those guys where I'm like, hey, like me and you buried this shit, bro. We buried it. But I was like, hey, I'm at least willing to give it a chance, because maybe there's some sort of layer there for storytelling that they have a plan. And obviously, they didn't have a plan. They clearly didn't like the guy, and the guy got publicly buried on television.
No, and it sucks because it feels like a lot of this talent, they were never able to really get a footing, like Blair Davenport.
Yeah,
She, out of anybody, I think she was just the one person that truthfully did not get a chance. She had like that triple threat match, and that was it that I can remember.
The problem with Blair Davenport is it's to me it's the same thing that you see with NXT call-ups where they just don't have a plan. Like Cameron Grimes.
Yeah,
She got the Cameron Grimes treatment, got called up, and they actually didn't have a plan for her. And I think that's a big miss. I think that's a big fuck up, honestly, because you need to have. First of all, she's an incredibly great in-ring worker. You can do a lot of stuff with her presentation-wise. And then that's where I kind of get bothered because I'm like, well, you need suitable contenders for Chelsea Green.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, okay, well, you didn't do that. You didn't do that at all. So that was obviously a very, very big problem. And then you got to look at what they have in NXT with Julia and Stephanie Vaquer and Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez and all of these amazing women. It's like, man, if you don't have plans for her on the main roster, why not have Blair go down to NXT and be the queen of the women's division?
Yeah.
And then you could call her up when the time is right.
It doesn't make sense, man, because she was just, you've seen her talent in NXT and you've seen the way she could cut promos, and they called her up for a reason. They seen something in her. Just because they didn't have plans doesn't mean that they didn't see something in her. So they obviously felt like she needed to be called up. Again, she would have been a perfect contender for that Women's United States Championship because, dude, I don't want to sit here and just watch Mi Chin and Chelsea Green go back and forth for the title. I don't. So it sucks seeing somebody like, now again, Blair Davenport is another person who is going to be fine. She is going to land on her feet perfectly fine wherever she goes. I've seen a lot of people, I had posted 2 videos throughout the weekend talking about this, but some people were like, this is an opportunity for TNA to potentially build their roster up more than it already is.
Yeah.
Which I could see that being the case.
And that's a good talking point. We're going to get to that in a second. We got a couple super chats.
Let's do it.
Tolino Channel says, WWE has no plans for you. They see you as a liability. Prove them wrong. Rebuild yourself in 90 days and get out of the WWE shadow. Once you succeed, WWE will follow you. Follow the Drew Galloway model. And I love the fact that the Drew Galloway model has become such a big, prevalent thing in professional wrestling, because it is true. There are people that have done that. However, what makes me a little bit concerned about this, and I wouldn't have said this until this example got brought up to me, but Matt Cardona is the perfect person that went the Drew Galloway model, and nothing has happened since. So it's not even a sure thing. I mean, you really have to be undeniable for WWE to bring you back, because here's the thing. Vince McMahon fired a lot of people. Triple H rehired a lot of them back. So now that Triple H is letting people go, who's going to bring them back? It's got to be Triple H himself, unless he got outed as the creative chief officer. So, the thing that I'm looking at here is, I do agree, if they have no plans for you, they do see you as a liability. But what about the people that they did have plans for? Like Sonya Deville being part of Pure Fusion Collective.
That's something that they just started nothing but a couple months ago.
And so I see that, though, and it's like, well, Sonya Deville is incredibly talented, but Sonya Deville has never broken through that ceiling. And then what makes it worse is that a lot of people do tend to use this as a way to which, by the way, if you guys are one of these fans, if I see you in the chat or if I see you on Twitter or YouTube comments and you advocate for somebody else to lose their job, I think you're kind of a piece of shit, because some people would be like, I've seen some comments. They're like, how the fuck do you get rid of Sonya Deville, but then you keep Zoe Stark? Like, you should have got rid of Zoe Stark. Like, bro, that's such a dick thing to say. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm a human being at the end of the day. So I'm going to remain a human being. Yep. Obviously, I judge wrestling and I judge the business, but I'm not going to make those personal connections and like say these things about talent getting their jobs lost, because that's just not fair. But it's interesting because they did get rid of Sonya Deville, and it's not like she's not an active part of the roster where she's in a faction, and then it's like a little bit different, like in comparison to Giovanni Vinci or Blair Davenport,
Yeah.
like they're not on TV, but AOP and Sonya Deville are on TV, both in factions where there's a storyline. It's like kind of weird that WWE decided to do that. Now, on the flip side, if you're asking me, you know, which really what this all comes down to is WWE's same budget cuts. They obviously have new talent coming into the company. They just signed Jordan Grace. Obviously, they have a ton of women in NXT and a ton of men in NXT who are going to get called up.
Yeah, Roxanne
very
just
soon.
got called up, from my understanding.
Yeah, Roxanne's call up is official now, right? So like there's talent being called up. We obviously know Raw after Mania, SmackDown after Mania, Triple H will have some call ups. You know, they have to make room for these people. So I understand that part of the business, right? But it is interesting, like, okay, like if you have no plans for Giovanni Vinci, let's say he pissed off somebody backstage.
Yeah.
Let's say there's an issue there and you have no plans for him. Okay, I somewhat understand. I'm not advocating for it, but I somewhat understand that a little bit more if you're saying we're going to move somebody up from NXT to the main roster. However, when you have somebody like Sonya Deville, who is actively on TV, and you know that you're going to be calling up people from NXT to the main roster, then why not perhaps move Sonya Deville to NXT to fill that void when people get called up?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because especially if you're making NXT your quote unquote third brand, some of these stars that have lingered into the background that you just got rid of could have been utilized on NXT to help build that star power, like Gallows and Anderson, for example. Would have been a great tag team that you could have pushed down to NXT, let them work with some of the newer guys and help build the reputation of NXT as a third brand.
Yeah.
But instead, WWE is choosing to do choosing a different route here and just saying, no, the talent that we have down there is perfectly fine. And they're being able to do it as a third brand, even without these big star names. But then we sit here and we have discussions numerous times throughout the week about how NXT men's roster is not as in the main event scene is not as stacked, and we don't take anybody as serious. So it's like WWE is not perfect by any stretch. There are flaws within their system.
For sure.
And this is one of the times where the flaws are being shown.
Yeah.
Right now, they have this stacked, they have a stacked roster all around, but they have talent just not being utilized that could be utilized in certain spots. I hate it.
Yeah, I think this is a common issue in professional wrestling, and this is what happens when you blow up your rosters so big and so bloated. But it's just WWE, I feel like, has a little bit of extra cushion because there is a void in NXT. And that's why I'm saying, like, even Giovanni Vinci and Sonya Deville could have been moved to NXT.
Yeah, no problem.
And that would have been completely fine. So regarding the super chat, though, I do agree that you could rebuild yourself in 90 days. This part I don't get mad about because at least for the 90 days, you do get paid. I think WWE can always change their mind in 90 days, which some people choose to wait the 90 days and stay quiet. But man, if you have the ability to go to the performance center and train, I would go in the performance center and train and show what you can do and maybe impress the coaches in the meantime. So that way you keep your job in WWE.
Can they still do that within the 90 days?
I mean, technically they're getting paid. They're still technically contracted to them. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I can reach out and get some information on that. But if that would be an option, dude, I would be in the performance center every day showing Shawn Michaels. Yeah, like just trying to show them, hey man, like they got rid of me. They don't want me anymore. Maybe there's a chance you can save my job. I don't know. Maybe for 90 days, you literally just have to go home and collect your check and that's it.
Yeah.
That's a possibility too. But if I was a talent in WWE, if that was an option, I would be taking advantage of that because if you can show them something different, maybe anything, I don't know. It's very complicated. You made a point about TNA, and I want to hold that in a back pocket because obviously when there's WWE releases, then there becomes the conversation of where they should go.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about that.
We'll talk about it.
Shout out to Tolino Channel for that super chat. Real Take Wrestling. Omer drops a $4.99. He says, talent cuts are unfortunately part of the business, but cutting an injured talent when you're in the most profitable time in your company is scummy. So this has always been one of the things that have definitely pissed me off about WWE. From my understanding, Carl Anderson is currently injured.
Yes.
Now, granted, who knows? Like I said, he is getting paid for 90 days. Maybe he's expected to be cleared before the 90 days. I don't know the situation. So I don't want to speak too much on that without having like knowledge. However, what I will say is you are absolutely right. They are unfortunately a big part of the business. And it is absolutely scummy to release a talent that's injured. I think actually what's even more scummy though is signing people, releasing them, signing them, and then bringing them back and then releasing them again, which Luke Gallows might have the record for being like the most.
Dude, I mean, this guy gets dropped all the time.
But it's so strange because we see, you know, when we talked about this, AJ Styles being moved to Raw, no mention of the OC. Like, bro, you have an opportunity. And here's what's actually crazy too, because we know that tag team wrestling isn't the big focus in WWE, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me you can't find a singles role for both of them in the company, put Carl Anderson in the mid card on SmackDown, Luke Gallows?
You can.
You can. Or better yet, you can move them to NXT. Now, the OC has been getting paid basically to stay home essentially since they've been back in the company.
Oh yeah, for sure. They had like a couple stints on TV. I think they did some stuff in NXT, but it was very lighthearted.
Very, very little work on television. And that to me is always something that bothers me. And that's something that I don't like that. You know what I mean? Again, we're looking at an area on TV that like definitely struggles to be a factor on television that actually matters. And then you got rid of 2 tag teams. Man, you could have blown up the Final Testament and that would have been completely fine.
Yeah, AOP, man, like I said, just the lack of utilizing your tag teams. It's horrible because tag team and wrestling in WWE once was something that was like special and you know something that a lot of people look forward to.
Yeah.
And you go back and you watch the Royal Rumble between DIY and the Motor City Machine Guns and how big of a pop that they should have gotten and didn't. It sucks. It does.
Yeah. But like, okay, even if you don't want to use them as like this major tag team, you're telling me you couldn't do something cool. I mean, you got Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and the OC. You're telling me you couldn't try to recapture the Bullet Club thing? Like,
whoa, I didn't even think about that.
But I'm just saying there's options. There's options. And I really wish this doesn't get talked about, but I really wish I was a fly on the wall when it comes to how WWE decides, hey, we're doing budget cuts. Because they, as a business, obviously we can only give that fans perspective. But I feel like it would just be nice to hear their thought process because like the OC, I get it. These aren't young up and comers. You know,
no, these are guys that have been around for years.
But like, okay, why not use them as a veteran tag team? Let them win the tag titles and then put over, you know, an upcoming tag team, right? Like,
again, I kind of look at what TNA has done with the Hardys and how they've been utilized there.
Yeah,
there's certain ways to do things, and again, WWE isn't a perfect system. They're flawed in some aspects, and this just so happens to be another case where they're flawed.
Yeah. Shout out to Omer for the $4.99. There was another one from Tolino Channel. He says Grace taking pay cut. Knight once told he was making more than what WWE offered, but money from independent has a ceiling. Once you succeed in WWE, it's unlimited. It was talked about in my video today. Jordan Grace took a pay cut joining WWE. Whether that's from the contract or not, that's really not the important thing. But Jordan Grace had an OnlyFans prior. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you know, when you're doing content online, Patreons, OnlyFans, whatever, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to make money there. So Jordan Grace took a pay cut because she got rid of that. Basically, my sentiment is this, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but my sentiment is that, like, I understand why WWE doesn't want talent on OnlyFans. OnlyFans has a reputation for explicit content. Doesn't mean that everybody who's on there is posting explicit content. So let's just make that clear. But that's what OF has the reputation for. But I think it's actually beneficial for WWE to allow their talent to have those connections where they're on Cameo, live streaming, Twitch, YouTube, whatever. Yeah. Indy Hartwell is a perfect example of somebody who, after WWE, now more than ever, her YouTube content is like a really cool, enjoyable thing to watch. You know, people kind of make the joke, but like Eugene Dinsmore basically followed the Maven thing.
Maven himself is doing great.
Yeah, and then you got Devon Dudley doing a podcast and Undertaker doing a podcast. Like, I think it's a good thing for WWE talent to have podcasts and to be content creators, because at the end of the day, that's another avenue for WWE to make revenue. but for talent to get over. So I mean, listen, Jordan Grace took a pay cut, but she wanted to be in WWE. I'm sure WWE's paying her. The word going around is that they're paying her main roster level money. So
And she's going to NXT, right?
going to NXT for a very, very short period of time. People are saying it's kind of like the Dragon Lee thing.
Yeah, it's going to be just go in there, do what you need to do, get up here.
Yeah. I think the reason for that too is because we already got the WrestleMania plan settled, so they don't want to cross contaminate and fuck
right.
that.
You can build her up, going towards SummerSlam and whatnot.
Yeah. Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chat. There was another one that came in from Daniel Dixon. He dropped $4.99. He says, "Look how many of Vince's fires that Triple H rehired to then get refired again by him."
I was actually somebody that wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about it.
So it's actually kind of funny. If you look, so Triple H, it almost felt like a slap in the face to Vince, right? Like, haha, look at what I can do. And then you realize, oh, well, not everybody can be utilized.
Yeah.
I mean, take AJ Francis, for example, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that Triple H brought back in and then ultimately did not work. So it's like, I mean, can we sit here and be mad at Triple H for causing these people to come in and essentially realize like, oh yeah, no, we weren't going to use you in the first place. I thought maybe we had something, but we don't. I think it is okay to be mad at Triple H for something like that.
It's weird because Triple H, for example, brought back Bronson Reed.
Yeah,
an amazing rehire.
And some worked.
Some very much worked.
Yeah.
So I think what always kind of bothered me about this was the fact that Triple H rehired people and did a really good job. But then, like, when you see AOP and the OC on this list of talent,
yeah,
they were released multiple times, bro. And you never did anything with them. And I don't care what anybody says. The OC had it worse because they were never really used, and then they were used in NXT for a little bit. But like AOP was used, and they just simply didn't get over as part of the Final Testament. And by the way, the Final Testament doesn't need to be a faction. They took care. The storyline should the idea like Karrion Kross was a perfect rehire, and everybody tried to bury him. But the reason why Karrion Kross is such a perfect rehire is because it shows you if you're patient and you just keep people on TV relevant enough, eventually it will work. And that is exactly what happened to Bronson Reed. And we're seeing that firsthand, obviously, with Naomi. We saw that firsthand with Karrion. Now, Karrion Kross, for those who don't remember, but literally since the day one that he stepped back in with the Drew McIntyre thing till now, he has literally changed every single person he has interacted with.
And you're constantly seeing it.
And it's constantly unfolding, and it's constantly making a better product. So eventually when Karrion Kross gets that massive, massive, massive feud, dude, it's going to be a fucking game changer. So he has done a good job with certain rehires, but there's also been a couple where it's like, you didn't do a good job here. And it does make me scared. And we'll talk a little bit about this after the TNA topic, but it does make me a little bit scared for some of these people in NXT. And I want to talk about that as well.
Yeah, we can have that conversation.
Shout out to Daniel Dixon for the $4.99. Shout out to Brad Jedi. He became a member. He has joined the Job Squad. So shout out to Brad. He also follows that up with the super chat for $2. He says, any chance Alistair is teased tonight on Raw?
All right.
Well, this is, yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Chad Gable's going to the yards of Dark Lucha.
Academy of Luchadors.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they kind of teased it before.
If they put him in a match with Dragon Lee tonight.
Say that again?
I said if they put Chad Gable in a match with Dragon Lee tonight, just know he's going to the Dark Arts Academy.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is I think Aleister Black 100% goes to SmackDown. I think the minute that Zelina Vega went to the transfer portal, we talked about this before.
It was there.
Yeah. Zelina Vega could go manage Andrade like a lot of people have expect. But I think they knew, hey, we're probably going to bring in Aleister Black to SmackDown. So we're going to move Zelina Vega now to SmackDown. That way they can be on the same brand.
I think SmackDown needs a little bit more star power, especially running a 3-hour show. And this past Friday was a really good show, by the way.
Yeah.
I think they're going to utilize him over on SmackDown, kind of get him involved in that mid-card, upper main event level picture.
I mean, like I've said before a million times on the Ango Show Live, baby, Aleister Black should 1,000,000% be somewhat involved in the world title picture at some point.
At some point, yes. I
At
agree.
some point, and I think, I mean, I would rather see them hot shot it, but I know they won't.
No.
But I mean, we saw what happened with Malachi Black and Cody Rhodes in AEW. They want me. They left me wanting more. AEW never really did anything
I
with
talked
that.
about that in my video today.
Yeah, so I would love the idea of Aleister going after Cody. You know, obviously, I think we'll get some teases. I do. I think commentary might tease it. I think they should. I don't know if they hold off on Aleister Black coming after WrestleMania season, but if I were them, and I'm just gonna say this,
and he's free to come whenever.
He's free to come whenever.
Yeah.
What I would really love, and this is just my personal, honest to God opinion.
Yeah.
I don't even think they should fucking tease it. If he is coming to WWE, I think they should put him on TV right away. Mm-hmm. Meeting with Adam Pearce, meeting with Nick Aldis, meeting with Ava. Do the same thing they did with Jade Cargill.
I like
where
that.
You're meeting with the brands, and then once you meet the general managers, you make your choice.
Yeah.
And I think you should have them interact with other talent that could be potential feuds, so they get you a little excited. So if Aleister Black shows up and he's walking backstage to meet with Adam Pearce, hey, thank you for calling me into your office. What kind of offer you got for me?
Mm-hmm.
And when he walks out of the office, you know, you don't see all the dialogue, but when you see him walk out of the office, he has kind of like a reaction. He should bump into another talent. You know, the thing is, what I think about wrestling is not everything needs to be a surprise.
Yeah.
This is also somebody who has been on WWE programming before, and we're very well aware that he's no longer in AEW.
Right.
You do a surprise, I don't think it really matters as much. But I think when you look at Jade Cargill and how she debuted, it was like, hey, it was a big deal because the GMs wanted her. Let's do that, right? And then you could do the whole thing where he shows up in NXT and he's talking to Ava, and he, you know, hey, you are one of the best NXT champions that we've ever had, and I would love to have your service. And then, you know, you can have him walk past Obafemi, and you could have him walk past, you know, another NXT talent, and just like it kind of gives you the idea of, hey, this could be a cool feud. And then he should show up with Nick Aldis, and Nick Aldis again successfully negotiates for him to come in, right. And then you have him cross paths with Cody,
kind of like what they did with Randy Orton, where he just said like, oh, Randy's going to be on SmackDown and stuff like that. Like, I think that's I don't know. I like that idea that you're pointing out there.
I think the wrestling fans want surprises.
Yeah, and it's better to just have somebody come in and let that be the surprise itself.
The surprise itself, I think you do that for certain talent. Like Ricky Starks coming out as a surprise would be fun, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like there's just certain moments that are bigger because they're a surprise, but this is a talent we've seen on WWE programming before. So why not hype them up a little bit? Or you could do the video packages, you know, you could do the vignettes, and the vignettes are cool, but I think it's really cool to see things in like an open world format where you're interacting, because WWE, if there's one thing they do really well with, it is the fact that like things that happen backstage matter. We saw this with the Wyatt and the Wyatt family, you know, when Bray was coming back, and we saw, you know, the dolls everywhere, and like, dude, like that was really cool and mysterious. You could even do something like that for Aleister Black.
For sure.
However, imagine you do that, and then Aleister Black shows up and he's walking out of the office with Adam Pearce, and maybe he's not actually happy with the conversation he had with Adam Pearce, and he shows up with the other GMs. The idea is to get people talking until you actually put them on TV in matches. But if you had him walking out of Nick Aldis's office, and then Cody Rhodes is waiting to talk to Nick Aldis, which by the way would make sense, because Cody and Nick Aldis right now, Nick Aldis isn't too thrilled with Cody constantly working hurt and coming back after a pile driver and this and that. Man, imagine if you walked past Cody, that's your little seed that's planted for long term in the future. If you ever want to revisit that, it just gets you excited about it. And maybe it gets you even more excited to say, hey, I want to see this guy on SmackDown. Right. So Brad, I think there's a chance we see, I think we get some sort of teases. WWE moves very quickly. We saw what happened with Penta. They were very, very quick with Penta.
Yeah, and they had Punk sign that day.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention about Aleister Black, by the way, which this might not be like the thing that everybody loves to hear. I love Shinsuke Nakamura's presentation. and there's a lot of great things I will say about Shinsuke Nakamura, but I don't want to see Shinsuke Nakamura hold this belt forever. And so when I look at SmackDown and I think of Andrade potentially having some bangers with Carmelo and Aleister Black, and you build up that mid card, Aleister Black coming in, taking the US title off of Shinsuke could be a really cool thing that you do at WrestleMania. Yeah. Or, like there's just a lot of things you can do there. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm just saying there is an immediate opportunity for him. So here's the thing. I don't want to wait forever.
No.
If you're going to make me wait forever, then we grow impatient. And it was really nice with the Penta teases. It was not very long. We knew it was Penta, and they weren't necessarily hiding it. Then they gave us Penta. Like, do the same thing with Aleister Black. I'm totally cool with it. Or do the meetings with the GMs. We know he's a free agent, and I don't think that's going to obviously happen. I think we're going to wait a little bit until Aleister's in WWE if he shows up. But move quickly with it. Don't surprise people.
Right.
Surprise people. Listen, you want to surprise people. The best surprises are like, holy shit, I didn't know that person was actually a free agent and they just showed up.
Yeah, exactly. That's a surprise. Now we know that Aleister Black is a free agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let him come in and let him just work.
Just like we knew with Penta. He was always going to go to WWE. AEW fucked around a little bit.
And WWE announced it during the day.
And they listed his merch and everything.
Right. So why not,
Shout out to Brad for the $2 super chat. And also, again, thank you for becoming a member. David Primero dropping $4.99. He says, why create a women's mid card if you don't keep more women? Blair is gold in NXT. Should have been women's champion there. Same with Sonya. Could fight for the IC title. Exactly.
That's one of the biggest arguments.
That I think that's perfectly said. There's a void on TV, and some of these people fill the void.
Yes. Especially when you're introducing mid-card titles. So, because if you're not rushing to call up talent from NXT, like they haven't, like the only one that we know of currently is Roxanne Perez. So somebody like Blair Davenport, like you said, can kind of fill that gap and fill that void until they're ready to call up talent. Because right now, at least as of today, there has been no new talent that have potentially come over to SmackDown. And it's going to, again, like I said, kind of just be the same circle. Michin versus Chelsea Green for the U.S. women's title. And it's like, what did we introduce it for if you're going to have the same matches? You're not adding any relevance to those championships by doing so.
Yeah.
Nothing is taken seriously at that rate. And it's like, okay, I'm going to look at that title the same way I'm looking at the regular men's U.S. title right now with Shinsuke holding it. It holds no value because nothing's being done with it.
It's not necessarily that nothing's being done with it. It's that nothing that is being done, the things that are being done with it is not coming across as a big deal.
Yes. And maybe that's better and more well-spoken. It's when I look at it, it's hard for me to just get invested because, even when they had the title on like LA Knight, for instance, it still just did not offer that same value that it should have, because I remember when they were quote unquote reintroducing the United States Championship and they had the video package that they did for it. I was like, oh my God, the same thing that they did with the Intercontinental Championship. It was like, oh my God, like they're bringing prestige back to these titles. Now, all of a sudden, the prestige of these championships are just completely gone. And it's like, okay, Triple H is really good at the main event scene, right? I think we can all agree on that. Triple H is up here when it comes to keeping us just naturally invested throughout the show, especially Raw, right? But over on SmackDown, you see a little bit more of a void, and you see a little bit more of a struggle where things aren't as consistent as maybe over on Raw. So, go ahead.
No, continue.
It just feels like there's a lack of motivation over on SmackDown compared to Raw. And you see it within all the matches that are taking place.
So this is where I disagree just slightly.
Yeah, that's fine.
I agree. The main event scene is perfectly, like, it's a lot of attention to detail.
Yeah.
On Raw, the difference between Raw and SmackDown is on Raw, you see a lot of attention to detail in the mid-card, title or non-title.
Well, doesn't
matter.
That's what I'm saying. Like, consistency through the board of the show.
Correct. On SmackDown, I think it is a little bit different because if you're watching SmackDown and you see, for example, like Chelsea Green's on TV, Piper Niven, the women's US titles on TV, they're constantly on there. The tag team division we saw with Pretty Deadly, they're keeping the tag team division afloat better on SmackDown than on Raw.
For sure. I will say that.
They have the stuff floating around with Cody and Kevin. And then, by the way, they have a follow-up now. Solo Sikoa's back. People's initial reaction is, oh my God, they're building for Solo versus Cody at WrestleMania. That is not what's happening. Solo has every reason to go after Cody.
He needs a match for the Elimination Chamber.
So here's the thing. What people are not realizing, though, is there's a bigger storyline in play, but we haven't got to that point. So this was point A where Solo Sikoa had to attack Cody. But I think everybody needs to pay attention to what happens with Solo and Tama Tonga and of course Jacob Fatu, right? Yeah. So Solo had to come back and end the show. And I think it's well done. Great job with the Carmelo Hayes and Tozawa thing, right? Mm-hmm. It made sense. There's consistency there. But I just think there's more attention to detail on Raw than SmackDown, where SmackDown has multiple stories throughout the night. Perfect example. Raw has multiple stories throughout the night, and everybody's paying attention. Sheamus, Ludwig, Punk, Rollins, and everything. Now SmackDown, we got Drew, so that's obviously going to elevate things a little bit.
Yes.
But on SmackDown, across the show, it's logical and it makes sense, but it's not as impactful as what you're seeing on Raw. And I think that's the word that makes the most sense. It's not that it's inconsistent. It's just not as impactful.
Sure.
That's going to change. That's going to change. And I know there was a super chat that got brought up too, so we'll get to that. But like LA Knight and Drew McIntyre is a perfect example of, hey, this could be a really good story.
As long as we give it time.
You got to give it time. We're at the beginning stages of it. So we obviously got to pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
Shout out to David Primero for the $4.99 Toledo channel, back with another super chat. Corbin said that he took a pay cut for NXT work, but a particular person worked in his release. Backstage politics still exists in WWE. Backstage politics exists in any single job that you work.
Always.
It doesn't matter. That's how the world works because human beings are naturally just selfish fucks.
Yes. Nasty and selfish.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from working in a corporation when I did, there was a lot of people who were always trying to take your spot. They act buddy with you, and the moment they could stab you in the back, trust me, they'll fucking do it.
If you worked in the corporate world at all ever, you will know that is something that happens quite often.
That's a real thing. Any job, really. If there's an opportunity for growth anywhere, whether it's headlining WrestleMania or getting promoted to management, it's the same shit. There's always going to be backstage politics. And that'll never go away. I definitely believe backstage politics still exists in WWE. I don't think it's as bad as it was, 20, 30 years ago, but I definitely think it still exists. And what I will say about backstage politics too is, let's go back to the Giovanni Vinci thing. It was very clear in hindsight that Giovanni Vinci got blacklisted. There was something happened. Like they blacklisted him from the show.
That Imperium story, I was like, oh yeah, no, something happened.
They didn't tell the Imperium story. They came in and had him lose. I mean, they basically blacklisted him from television. We saw him a little bit backstage segments with Carmelo and Cody at one point, but we never really saw him, actually wrestle and actually do things on TV. So it was very clear they had plans to just bury him.
Yeah.
So, when you see that people are talking, the comments and Twitter and social media is talking about the Ludwig Kaiser, Tiffany Stratton thing, again, that's internet gossip, and we don't want to give too much warmth to those stories, but obviously something happened where he did not become liked. Which, by the way, if that happens in the real world, you work a job and you're not well liked, or you do something that pisses, you're just gonna get fired. And it sucks because in professional wrestling, you don't want to see that happen. You don't want to even see it happen in the real world jobs. But I do think those things have to be mentioned because I think
it has to be a topic of discussion.
For sure. Somebody pissed somebody off. Now, the one thing that we don't talk about is, and again, this is why I said earlier, I want to be a fly in the wall in these conversations, but is it Triple H's sole decision to say, hey, I just don't have creative plans for them, this is it? Or is it somebody like Nick Khan and Ben Shapiro or Mark Shapiro, whatever his name is, the CFO or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who it is. Like in the
I mean,
company.
that was always something that I wonder too. Is like who's really making those decisions at the end of the day?
Yeah, like
Because
Ari.
jump to blame Triple H.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about his position and what he actually does.
So it's interesting. Ari Emanuel is the CEO of Endeavor, right? And
Yeah.
so he was recently talking about this on the Pat McAfee show, where he says like he's involved in meetings and stuff all day for both businesses, UFC and WWE. But basically, when it comes to actually operating creatively and what's happening in those companies and booking and matchmaking and everything, he has no role. That's why he trusts the leaders that he has, which I think is an amazing thing for Ari Emanuel, because that means he hired some people that he genuinely trusts to do the things
for sure.
That's to run a business. So I'm curious if TKO basically came to Triple H and said, listen, we want to shuffle things up a little bit financially. You know, we're doing great. We want to make room for more stars on TV. And, you know, you guys are bringing in Penta and Jordan Grace, and Josh Alexander is rumored of coming in.
You got to pick some names.
You got to take a couple people out. We got to keep you around this amount of money for talent contracts. And right now you're exceeding it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can you give us a list of people that we're going to cut?
It does start up there. I think everybody should know that.
Yeah.
It does start with Ari Emanuel, and then it trickles down. Ari Emanuel is the one with the numbers.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they come to him and it just gets passed down, and then Triple H has like the conversation with Nick Khan as far as like, hey, we got to be at this amount of money for yearly budget, you know, for roster.
It's not so much about budget cuts. It's just more of we're trying to maintain a budget.
Yeah, and so therefore we got to get rid of these talents. And then I think Triple H, maybe with some other people backstage, they have a conversation of like, hey, what can we do with this person and this person and this person? Yep. Okay, hey, we don't really see a plan for these people. That's why I really want to be a hole in the wall, a fly in the wall, because I want to be able to hear those conversations and see what's like the sole purpose of how they come to that decision.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think for sure, if you backstage politics exists, and I think your backstage decorum matters. So if you are somebody who gets along with everybody and you boost the morale and you wave the company flag, I think you are definitely somebody who is going to be appreciated. And, you know, I think for that reason, people will decide, hey, let's keep you. And let's keep you. By the way, hey, right now we don't really like you, so we're going to get rid of you.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Tolino Channel for that super chat as well. He has another one. He says, after SmackDown, are you interested in Drew versus Knight in the future? Both can kill it on the mic. If pushed, LA Knight could have a great match with Drew. Billy, I'm going to let you answer this in just a second because I don't want to speak too much on this.
Yeah.
What I think is very interesting about this feud was the immediate reports that we saw with Drew storming off backstage. LA Knight came out, cut a great promo, and then he acknowledged what the talk was on the internet. Oh, I forgot to get my stuff in. LA Knight. Yeah, right. So, obviously when something like that happens, I think there is money in it because now social media makes it bigger. So, do I think they'll have a 5-star match? Absolutely not. Do I think they'll have a fun story? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think us sitting here talking about it just created the story that they were looking for.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So am I interested? You best believe it. Now I am, because the internet just made the story. So now I'm going to play into it a little bit. And now I know it's exciting because there is drama there. And who doesn't love drama? Let's be real here. I enjoy drama.
Yeah, I agree.
So why not?
Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chat. D-Rec Tube dropping $2. Should SmackDown turn into hybrid black and gold? Yeah, I think I mean, in ways, Raw is already the hybrid black and gold.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the presentation and everything.
SmackDown, what they need to fix is beefing up that mid card, letting those guys wrestle. Shinsuke Nakamura is not the same wrestler that he was in ring back when he was in Japan. So I think that's got to be considered. I think Carmelo Hayes and Andrade can do a lot of great things in that mid card.
I think Jimmy Uso is doing pretty well too.
Jimmy Uso's killing it on the mic. He's making me excited.
Yes.
That Jim. Promo, Big Jim cut. What a promo that was, dude. Holy shit.
Big Jim. Drew McIntyre saying you could have done it if you just would have said yeet first.
Yeah, but he also responds back and he's like, I could get them to say yeet. Yeet. I
No.
can get them to say no yeet, no yeet. You know, like it was funny because I feel like Jimmy finally got a chance to show.
Yeah, if
Um,
SmackDown could continue doing everything that they did this past Friday, I think they'll be fine. You know, you've seen some stuff with Shinsuke Nakamura and The Miz back there. I think there's a lot of potential for SmackDown.
but like that doesn't entice me.
It doesn't. That's kind of the problem.
But you know what entices me?
Huh.
When I see Carmelo Hayes and Andrade being like really, really good wrestlers and then having great presentation and then
And let's
going out
remember
there.
that that's always what SmackDown was. If you look at the history of SmackDown, it's always where they did more of the wrestling side of things.
Yeah.
That was always where the wrestling was showcased more. I think Paul Heyman made that a really big stigment of Friday Night SmackDown when he was running it back in like 2004.
You know what's crazy, by the way? Because we were talking about the releases.
Mhm.
I see a guy like Cedric Alexander get released, and I'm just thinking, like, bro, you're telling me Cedric Alexander right now can't go out there and have a fucking banger match with Carmelo Hayes and a great story?
Yeah, he can. And again, it's just dropping the ball.
Again, those fucking budget cuts.
Budget cuts.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I will be right back for 1 minute. So, Billy, I'm going to give you a chance to just talk your head off for a minute.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Did we have any
And-
more super chats that I can answer?
Not that I know of, but if we get any in while I'm gone for a minute,
Yeah, I'll be able to see them on my screen. I won't pop them up on the screen because I can't, but I'll go
Yeah.
through. And I'll
Yeah,
just talk through the chat.
yeah, and then just so you guys know, we'll come back. We're going to talk about that TNA thing that Billy mentioned because that is a very important thing.
Yes.
And I do want to talk about Super Bowl because there's relevancy there.
Yeah, we got a super chat.
Go ahead, Billy. It's all you.
All right. So this is from Jose Martinez. He said, you guys think WWE dropped the ball on WrestleMania 41? Honestly, WrestleMania 40 was great. The hype, the premiere of waiting for WrestleMania 40 commercial during the Super Bowl. Genius. Jose, do I think WWE drops the ball on WrestleMania 41? No, I don't. I actually think WrestleMania 41 is going to be one of the most built up WrestleManias of all time. And the reason why I say that is because WWE, they tend to do that every year, right? They tend to make you excited for WrestleMania no matter what's happening. It doesn't matter who's running the company. WrestleMania is always the most built up show that there is. And I think this year, a lot of people will argue that The Rock kind of messed it up or whatever the case is. But I think no matter what, WWE is going to do just fine by not even having The Rock. I think there's enough story there to be told. But no, I don't think they dropped the ball on WrestleMania 41. The hype around WrestleMania 40 was super real, though. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think that last year of wrestling in like that era. Fun fact, that's like what got me back into or that's what got me into wrestling and doing wrestling content on YouTube and stuff, was actually that side or that time. That's actually what got me into it. But yeah, no, I don't see him dropping the ball. Hey, welcome back, man.
Thank you, sir. It wasn't even a minute.
No, that was so quick.
I'm ready to super chat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to hear what you said, but I don't think you said no.
I don't.
What you say?
No, I don't think they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a world where WWE drops the ball on WrestleMania. It's just not something that they're known to do. WrestleMania is their Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think the way Triple H books WrestleMania is different. It's not always a culmination of stories ending at WrestleMania, which I like. So I think people got to get used to that. But I do think it's gonna be a really fun WrestleMania, regardless of what we get. To be honest, I think in hindsight, The Rock fucking everything up last year.
That's actually what I just talked about for a second, was him kind of doing the same thing this year.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Ari Emanuel's teasing something too, so maybe The Rock shows up in Toronto. Yeah,
What did he say? I didn't see.
he said something about Elimination Chamber, some big things happening.
And Ari Emanuel saying that is something.
Yeah, and if anybody would know closest to The
It'd be
Rock,
Ari Emanuel.
it's gonna be Triple H, Ari Emanuel,
Mm-hmm.
Brian Gerwitz, and The Rock. So
Brian Gerwitz is somewhere in there, ready to tell the story.
yeah, I think WrestleMania 41 will be more exciting as we get closer and closer and closer to it for sure.
Yes, I agree. Can't wait to see John Cena back at the Chamber too.
Yeah. Shout out to Jose Martinez for the $9.99. Thank you, brother. Really quick. So you mentioned something about TNA. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but I wanted to mention it.
Yeah.
I say this every time people get released, and you will see the people that go out there and make it happen and the people that don't. TNA is the perfect playground for WWE releases, to be honest with you, because a lot of people leave TNA to go to WWE or AEW. Speedball Mike Bailey has left the company. Josh Alexander is expected to leave in 5 days. Jordan Grace just left. They obviously lost Deonna Purrazzo. They lost Naomi. They lost Taya Valkyrie. They lost a lot of talent. But I say this every time people get released. Go to TNA. Become a star in TNA. We talked about this with Duke Hudson.
It's building your brand.
Yeah, build your brand. Go and show something different in TNA because you help fill a void in TNA. Some people got released by WWE and went to TNA and did amazing things.
Yeah.
Perfect example was Steve Cutler, aka Steve Macklin. There is an opportunity to go to TNA and have a great career. Going to AEW, in my opinion, is not necessarily the solution. It's not an anti-AEW take. It's just very simple. AEW suffers the same exact problem that WWE has, where they are not really that great at utilizing their entire roster. Tony Khan gets a new action figure. He plays with it for a couple of weeks and he's done. We can sit here and debate it all day. This is not a debate anymore. I'm not debating it anymore. For the last 5 years, I've been saying this, so it's getting very tiresome. Going from WWE to AEW doesn't necessarily equate to anything. Going from WWE to TNA is the opportunity to become something.
Yeah, because you notice that TNA, when you watch it, every star on that roster is being utilized.
Brother, it's very simple. This is the simplest thing in the world. This is just how it is. We can sit here and discuss it until we're blue in the face. Okay? Malachi Black was a perfect example. I went back today and read the comments on my video when Aleister Black debuted and when he signed with the AEW. You know, he's going to be a star. He's a world champion. Tommy End is going to kill it. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Now, when I make a video about Malachi Black being in the company, he sucks. He's washed. He was never that good. This is a common trend in professional wrestling. There's no genuine. Every conversation about this becomes disingenuous.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm done debating it. With TNA, there is an opportunity because there is a void. In AEW, there isn't a void. Okay? That's the reality. We could sit here and talk about Ricky Starks going to WWE. How many times have I said it? I would much rather see him go to NXT because that's where the void is.
For sure.
Like, there's just certain things you need to look at. So I just want to make that very clear. We're going to see who is
like that, who have like longevity on their career still.
Yes. Now, let's just be very clear here, okay? Because this is the thing. We're going to see who's really about it when they leave WWE.
Yeah.
After their 90 days. Okay? The OC will probably show up in AEW.
Or Japan.
Okay? But like people like Sonya Deville, does she go in the indies? Does she go test the indies market? Or does she pull a Mandy Rose and become a podcaster? Does she? Because everybody said Mandy Rose going to AEW, Mandy Rose going to TNA. No, she left wrestling.
Yeah, just never showed back up.
And some people, and listen, sometimes this is the harsh reality, and I say this, I swear to God, I know it's not going to be a popular opinion, and I'm not saying personal names, but there are people who get released from WWE, and that's it for them.
Yeah, dude.
And that's it. And I don't think it's because WWE killed their love for wrestling. I don't think they ever fucking loved wrestling, and that's why they were never used.
Yeah, some people just, they get a check and they call it a day.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, make your money.
Yeah, do your thing.
And then you see that makes a name for them, and then they go off and they do the podcast stuff, or they do this or whatever, you know?
Also, the only other thing I'll say, Cedric Alexander should 1000% go to TNA. 2 reasons why.
Yeah, I disagree.
No, fuck you.
Because you already know what my disagreement is.
What is it? Because you want to see him in the Hurt Syndicate?
Of course. Yeah, it makes sense. That was actually the only person that I advocated to go to AEW.
So when Tony Khan was talking mad shit about his wife.
I know. I get it.
You get it.
And yeah, bro, it's fucked up. But it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I hear you 100% because I wouldn't do that shit if somebody was talking about like personally, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
But when it comes down to like where your people are, I mean, that's where his people are.
So Bobby Lashley is tag team champions with Shelton Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Lashley should obviously be world heavyweight champion. So how do you do this? You bring in Cedric and then what?
You let him in. Okay, Bobby Lashley becomes the world champion. You let Shelton and Cedric have the tag team championships.
So Bobby Lashley is just gonna be like, here you go, here's my belt. Here you go, buddy. It's all yours. It's
I
a
think
donation.
it's also a nostalgia thing too.
Yeah, for sure. I think Cedric Alexander, if he went to AEW, would actually be cool not to see him in the Hurt Syndicate.
Okay, so
I'd rather see him
you don't
go
want to
off.
see him in the Hurt Syndicate because you feel like you've already seen the Hurt business.
No, I mean I don't mind him being in the Hurt Syndicate. I mean, personally speaking, I don't want to see him in AEW at all
Now, why?
because I want to see him in TNA and run the X division.
But do you think that will do justice for what Cedric Alexander has done? And we're going to talk about stories. The stories that Cedric Alexander has told, he's been most notably utilized in the Hurt Syndicate, and he's been notably known in the Hurt Syndicate or the Hurt business at the time.
I think the most popularity he ever had was the Cruiserweight Classic, buddy.
Really?
Yeah, the Hurt Syndicate, the Hurt business was very short lived. Vince McMahon didn't give a fuck about it. It happened at a time where wrestling wasn't really buzzing.
That's
No,
true.
I think Cedric should go to TNA. I think he should be part of the X division.
Yeah.
I think him and Mustafa Ali would be perfect.
fire.
I think you could send him to New Japan and let him do the the tournaments and stuff. I think you could send him to AAA if you want and do stuff. I think Cedric 1000% shouldn't go to AEW. I don't care about seeing the Hurt Syndicate with him. I just personally
on a personal level, when you talk about the things that has happened to his wife, yeah, I wouldn't go. Like that for me personally, like there's morals to some of the shit. You know what I mean? And I think you have to respect your morals more than you respect the business, right?
So Tony Khan cuts you a check for over $1 million.
Shit, I might walk in, no problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And Tony can do that.
He could.
Mm-hmm. Especially if he wants his toys to work, you know?
Yeah. I don't think he should go.
Okay. That's fair.
I think he should go to TNA.
That is fair.
I think Cedric Alexander could be one of those guys that goes to TNA, kills in the X division, cashes in option C, and then becomes a world champion.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
That's what I think.
Sure. Why not? I'm a fan. I'd be a fan if he went to TNA. I mean, my love for Cedric Alexander isn't going to go away whether he goes to AEW or TNA. The guy's a talented wrestler. And he's going to do great things wherever he goes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't trust Tony Khan with him.
I don't. I dude, to be honest with you, I agree with your statement. The problem is just it makes sense, right?
Yeah, there's that connection. I think the problem, though, the reality that a lot of people don't ever actually want to admit, and this is the part that really sucks about it, is that years and years and years ago, AEW's selling point was that they were all great wrestlers, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where the best wrestle. The problem is everybody works that Ricochet style.
Yeah.
So you have so many different versions of Ricochet. Then you're going to bring in Speedball Mike Bailey. Like you have just so many incredible, talented wrestlers, but that style is so one way to me. Like I don't think it's like bigger, like or not bigger, but I don't think there's a big variety of the kind of wrestling you're seeing on AEW. Everybody does these things. I watched Brian Keith versus Bandito on Collision, fantastic match.
Great match.
But like these are things that we're getting all the time in AEW.
Yeah.
So when I see Cedric Alexander or Speedball Mike Bailey, you know, and people say, "Oh, they should go to AEW," the first thing I'm thinking of is like they're not going to be special. They're just another guy. So when you go to TNA, there is that opportunity to shine. Like I look at TNA as like, okay, you can do something really, really cool with Cedric Alexander in the X division. There's Leon Slater. There's a lot of guys, Ace Austin. There's a lot of guys where Cedric Alexander could go and have banger matches, but it's going to be the thing that catapults TNA versus what's currently happening in AEW. That's just my reality.
Yeah, I get it.
However, let me just be very clear. I also don't think he should have been released by WWE, and he should have actually been given an opportunity in WWE.
So do
And
I,
that's
because of the stories that could have been told with like Carmelo Hayes, like you said earlier.
yeah, there was just a lot of stuff they could have done with Carmelo and Andrade and Apollo Crews, and Apollo Crews just got hurt, so that fills a void, you know.
Right.
So that's something I obviously want to mention. Let's switch gears, Billy. Super Bowl, Chiefs got their asses spanked.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
They suck.
They were terrible. Now, we're not a Super Bowl analyst. We're not an NFL analyst, but yesterday there was obviously a lot of relevant wrestling stars at the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Mercedes and Swerve were there. Kip and Penelope Ford. Obviously, the big one that everybody's talking about is Vince McMahon being there.
Mm-hmm.
Vince McMahon was there, spotted with Shane and Undertaker, and a lot of people are wondering. A lot of people have their own, personal issues with this. A lot of people I see on Twitter are against Undertaker being friends with Vince.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen over time John Cena has pledged his loyalty to Vince as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things being said about this, but I definitely didn't expect Vince McMahon being at the Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot of AEW people are going to be there because Shad Khan,
Right.
he's owner of the Jags.
Yep.
But what was your reaction? I mean, you see these photos and videos floating around, especially with Vince being there. What was your kind of take from that?
I hate seeing Vince anywhere. I hate just knowing that guy still gets like public attention. He's one of those guys where it's like, dude, you got so much money. But again, I think it goes to who Vince is, right? He's controversy. And he's going to stir it up as much as he possibly can. And this is just another perfect example of that. I think that guy walked out there and knew exactly what was going to happen. So if you're asking me about the Vince situation, I hate it. I think Shane is the perfect face for you. If you want your name to be utilized in the correct way, Shane and Stephanie can go and do that. Dude, you do not need to be in the spotlight at all. I get it. You know what I mean? People will make the argument, oh, well, he's still a human being. He can still do things and whatnot. Again, this is on a personal level. You're a shit human being, and I don't think you should have any spotlight whatsoever. He's got fucking VIP passes around his neck and shit. It's like, it's shitty when you see somebody like The Undertaker sitting there with him, who you glorify so much, but you obviously know that there's a friendship there. And it's like, where do you draw the line at friendship, right? Where does that line get drawn? It's so hard to answer that question because I know for me, I personally have never been through it. I've never had somebody like one of my friends get, something like this happen to them. And I think you could say the same.
Yeah.
But it's like morally, dude, where are your morals? But I think, again, people will argue, well, nothing has been proven yet. So innocent until proven guilty. And it's like, no, dude, this shit is probably true.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
You don't think so?
No, you can't do that.
So
you're not. No. Go ahead. What are you going to ask me?
No, I was going to ask you. So what is your take on it?
My take has been the same since day one. Their allegations.
So allegations, yes. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch.
Yeah, they're allegations, and my belief is that it's a civil lawsuit. It's gonna get figured out. The judge will ultimately come out with some sort of ruling, and then that determines whether you're guilty or not. I think it's very easy for people on social media to just immediately say, "Oh, well, there's text messages, or there's this, there's that." At the end of the day, I'm not saying we have a fucking amazing legal system. I don't know. I can't really sit there and be like, "Oh my God, it's amazing." And obviously there's loopholes and stuff, but I don't believe in calling anybody guilty until they're actually found guilty.
Yes, it is a system of innocence until
like that. I think the world's kind of changed a little bit on that, where the society and social media
guilty.
Yeah, social media wants to make it like you're guilty right away, and then we've actually seen scenarios where people weren't necessarily guilty, and then it came out a little too late.
Somebody being a shit human being.
For sure. And listen, I'm not defending Vince McMahon by any means, and I'll never defend Vince McMahon ever. Regardless of the allegations, I don't know where this whole thing comes from, but like He's a billionaire. I don't think there's a lot of billionaires out there that I would respect on a personal level. I think they're all shitty human beings. I think billionaires have the way to change the course of life for everybody, and they don't. I think people are greedy and powerful, and they use that. So I think at the end of the day, it's not fair though to call. Excuse me. Apologize for that.
Mhm.
But I think it's very difficult to sit there and say, oh, well, this person's guilty, this person's guilty, this person's guilty. I don't care that social media will tell me that somebody's guilty. I very much rather wait and see. And that's why I don't have an opinion on anything until it comes out.
Comes out, right.
Obviously, I've been very, very clear. The allegations are fucking serious. They're incredibly serious. They're disgusting. They're fucking actually disgusting. When you read this stuff, it is very disgusting. And I don't know why they would ever want I don't know why any human being would actually want these things to be true, because that's just so fucking disgusting in general. You would like to hope that it's not. And if it is true and if it is real and it's all, which again, there's a legal system that plays out, but if all of that plays out and it comes out that he's actually guilty and he did these things, right? Yeah, I mean, again, it's fucking nasty. So it makes me intrigued though to see that Undertaker stands by his side and Vince is there. By the way, Vince is not, he's skinnier. He does not look the same.
No, he doesn't. I mean, this is just personally speaking, just doesn't look super healthy.
Yeah, he doesn't. But at the same time, too, whatever Vince McMahon's whole legal situation is, I mean, should it really prevent him from going out? No, I mean, it shouldn't. I'm just shocked that he did, because it obviously starts the conversation.
I think that's where the person, because everything, and I just want to let the chat know, everything that I'm speaking of is personally. But when you think about it on a more broader scale, it's like, why would you do that? Like, why is that something that you want to do, knowing that you have all these things being thrown at you?
Yeah.
That's just more on a broader scale that I think everybody can agree with.
And it's the same thing, like even like John Cena at one point, he did an interview and he was talking about like Vince being his friend and stuff. And I was like, man, like, I'm kind of shocked you took that route, because it just in general, why would you even want to be associated with it?
Right.
I think whether Vince is guilty or not doesn't really change how fucking weird Vince has been forever. I mean, just the storylines that he had with his daughter and stuff.
Dude, you know? He was always a weird guy.
Yeah, always a weird guy. So to me, but again, that's why I say it's not about guilty or not guilty. It's just I'm not one of those people about to sit here and join in on the social media popularity trend of saying, hey, you're guilty.
That's fair.
There's a process. That's why we have a process.
The legal process.
I think obviously they're kind of different scenario. They're not. I don't think I know they're different scenarios, but immediately everybody went after Odyssey Jones, and Odyssey Jones literally came out, and it literally came out that he's the one who had a protection order.
Yeah,
it's like
Zachary Wentz with that whole situation. They jumped to cancel people.
There's just been a lot of situations where I think cancel culture exists for the sake of we don't like this person, so let's.
Enzo Amore is another perfect example.
Things come out and it's not necessarily the way it was expressed before. And that's why I don't ever defend people, but I will never defend, but I'm also not going to prosecute on social media because it's not fair. These are people. And I thought it was very interesting that Vince was there because one, I think it just opens up a large conversation. I think it opens up a conversation that isn't necessarily healthy. And I think it opens up a conversation that is controversial. You know, what Vince did or didn't do at this point isn't even the thing. It's the fact that it's out there and it exists and people are talking about it. So he's at the Super Bowl. Obviously his son is with him. That's different because that's his son.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting when you see Undertaker being associated with it. And then it kind of makes you think about that. But, you know, what was really interesting about the Super Bowl was there was a lot of wrestlers there, and then the big talking point was Vince.
Yeah, it was always going to be the big talking point.
And then you kind of have to wonder, did Vince do it on purpose?
What do you mean?
I think it's very easy when allegations come out, and I mean, this is not really relevant to wrestling, but like the Hawk Tuah girl, like she had like a cryptocurrency thing.
Yeah, that big scandal or whatever.
I don't think it was her who personally did it, but I think she hired people on a team that kind of screwed her over. It led to a big controversy. I think Logan Paul as well has kind of been scrutinized for like these
A
crypto
lot of
scams,
people have.
and they get scrutinized. And then I think what ends up happening is there's other people in charge of it, but it reflects on them because that's their personal brand.
Yes.
And then immediately people want to cancel them and they don't really understand things. So I think what I've kind of learned throughout time is like not to be. I see these things happen and I see the things that get said and the things that occur, and I'm very aware of both sides of it.
That's
Where I think a lot of people in today's day and age, they're just not aware of both sides.
yeah, that's just called being conscious.
Now, but also at the same time too, like I've said, I've made this very, very, very fucking clear since day one. It's the reason why I continue to cover the Vince McMahon story. I'm very intrigued to know the facts, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of things that are said, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time too, I want to make that very clear. Based on what's been said, I would never condone that, never advocate for it, never stand by it, would never defend it. I think it is so fucking disgusting. But that's why there's a legal system. And I think that's what's really important is like
And
really
maybe that's exactly what's keeping somebody like John Cena and Undertaker around him.
I think that's just risky in general.
For sure.
I think that's risky in general because, you know, then you're associated with it to a certain extent. And I think, you know, what's really fucking shitty, by the way, is the fact that like these are like all real humans. Like actions have consequences, you know what I mean? And like there's peoples who are like there's people out there actually impacted by this stuff. And it's watching the Super Bowl and then like being on social media and seeing how like Vince was there. Like a lot of people, so for example, like the Hawk Tuah girl, like there was a point I was going to make with that too. The Hawk Tuah girl, it happened and then she went away from social media for months.
Just didn't show her face.
Like she went away.
Yeah.
Vince kind of has done the same thing where he hasn't really been seen in the public eye. There was one time where John Cena and his wife and Vince and
They all
I don't know who, they went out to dinner and TMZ covered it, but you don't really see them out and about. And sometimes I think in those situations, that's why it gets shocking is like you're showing yourself in public. Are you doing it as a way to let people know, hey, you're not fazed by this? Or are you doing it in a way just to live your normal life? And then obviously you have to mention that. And
that is something. Yeah. I mean, he could just be living his life and people are just naturally covering it.
But then there's also talks of Vince starting an entertainment company. So then you have to wonder, okay, he had all the VIP stuff. Is that just because he's a billionaire or is it maybe his new entertainment company getting involved? Him and Kevin Dunn and a few other people that were in WWE. No. So you got to wonder that too.
Yeah, agreed.
What an interesting weekend, bro.
Dude, just overall, so much happened. Like my brain, it took a minute to function everything.
Just a lot of stuff.
For sure. For sure.
What a weekend.
Yeah, dude.
I'm really intrigued. I don't know if anybody has last minute super chats, but go ahead and get those in before we conclude. If you guys have any questions or comments that you want us to talk about, but I think what was really Tolino channel said I missed a super chat. What?
I think you did.
No, I definitely read it. Let's see. Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah.
Should KO versus Zayn be a no holds barred at WrestleMania? Miss Ring of Honor, Kevin Owens versus El Generico, they could blow the roof off. Yeah, it's got to be a super. It's got to be a certain match type, a special match type.
Yeah, I heard some rumblings going around that it could potentially be in a Hell in a Cell.
I don't think they should do Hell in a Cell. I think
I don't either because they did it a couple years ago.
Just anything goes, no holds barred. Just
let them beat the shit out of each other.
They should be able to pin each other anywhere, take it to the concession stands, take it across the stadium, take it outside to the parking lot, let them go, let them wrestle, let them have the biggest. I mean, it's going to be a massive singles match.
And it'll be their biggest match together.
And that's their blow-off match. Like that should be their final singles match they ever have in their career. And then I think you got to move Sami Zayn to the world title picture when Jey Uso wins it.
Oh, yeah.
So the cool thing about the Zayn and Kevin Owens thing, I know everybody's saying Canada do the match, but no, I don't think so. I think this is 20 years of storytelling. Let it culminate at WrestleMania.
Yeah, it makes sense and let it be amazing.
And let Randy Orton help Sami Zayn win, so you justify Kevin Owens losing too. You could do that. There's a lot of stuff you could do, but I think at WrestleMania, man, it's the match that makes the most sense. And I know everybody wants to see it in Toronto, and I understand that, but I don't think so. I think you got to do it in the stadium. So, if you do it at Elimination Chamber, then what do you do for Sami at WrestleMania?
Yeah, exactly. And Sami has to have something to do at WrestleMania. He's had too good of a run to not do something at WrestleMania.
And I don't want him thrown in a 6-man ladder match.
No.
For the IC title.
No. You do this at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see 5 matches, 2 of the Elimination Chambers already booked. And then you get 3 other matches, and I don't think that should be one of them.
Yeah.
Maybe put the Intercontinental title on the line at Elimination Chamber.
U.S. title for sure.
Yeah, like you just got to leave that for WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's interesting. Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chat. Guys, we hit our super chat goal today, so thank you for that. Obviously a very, very big weekend, as we've said. Great episode of SmackDown, great episode of Collision. AEW tweeted, we didn't talk about this. AEW tweeted out that Grand Slam was a pay-per-view, then they edited it.
Oh yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah. I seen that. It's a pay-per-view, or tune into our pay-per-view on Saturday. Wait, hold on.
Yeah. Today's Raw was really they have some big plans for today's Raw.
Interested to see how long it goes.
What's your prediction?
Sticking to 237. I'm gonna get it one time.
237.
Yeah. What are you saying?
233.
233. All right. If you hit 233, I'm gonna be pissed.
I think it'll be 233.
I'm thinking 237. I'm gonna get it eventually.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. I'm curious. I know we got the super chat earlier about do we get any Aleister Black teases? I think we do. We get something.
And
sure.
Overall, some more storytelling into that mid card with the IC title.
Yeah, and then Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross and what's happening there with
Kevin Owens, what's he gonna say to that? Is he even gonna be there tonight because he got pile drived?
What's the follow up, right?
Right, exactly. We have to remember that pile driver took Cody Rhodes off TV, so this technically could take Sami off TV past the Chamber if they really want to do it that way.
It took Randy off TV even longer.
Exactly. So that's something to think about.
Poor Randy Orton, dude.
I know, bro. This guy got his ass whooped and has just been off TV. He's gonna come back and beat the shit out of Kevin Owens, though.
That pop for Randy at WrestleMania if he fucking RKO'd Kevin Owens. Oh my god.
And how great would it be if they told that story and fucking Randy just breaks into his house?
Oh,
come on.
Crazy. Myra dropping in 1999 out of nowhere, literally like an RKO out of nowhere. When the Vince documentary came out, I remember coming across a post, and the message was along the lines: realizing your favorite superstars have Stockholm syndrome. CM Punk said it best: "I don't need a father, I already have one." Yeah, you know what's interesting about the Vince McMahon documentary too? There was a lot of talk from Vince, like it wasn't like how to explain like the accuracy behind it with like the allegations and like all that stuff. Like, I don't know. It was interesting. What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, as somebody who I've lost both my pops, my stepdad and my dad. I can truthfully, CM Punk said it best. I don't need a father. I already have one. Stockholm syndrome is a real thing. And that's why some people get attached to people in that circumstance. But again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not none of that. So this is just my opinion.
So I actually never really heard of Stockholm syndrome. So I just Googled it. Mm-hmm. It's a psychological phenomenon where a victim develops positive feelings towards their captor or abuser often forming an emotional bond and even defending them, particularly in situations like hostage taking or abusive relationships
Mhm.
due to extreme stress and fear experienced during captivity.
Yep.
Essentially, the victim identifies with and sympathizes with their perpetrator. Interesting.
So it really what that's hinting at is like the Undertaker and John Cena and the things that they've done with Vince is what she's trying to say there.
Gotcha.
Yes.
You know, that's an interesting response. That's an interesting thing because
Yes.
again, I'm not a
Therapist, not a doctor.
yeah. I never, like I said, I never even heard of Stockholm syndrome
Yes,
before
it is-
this.
it is a disease that exists within people that if they've been victimized or something like that.
So in this case, you would be saying that John Cena and Taker were victimized.
Essentially, they could be if you love somebody so much that anything that they do, you can never look at them like they're wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people like I as somebody who I had a great relationship with my dad. My dad did a lot of wrong. I mean, I'll get personal here for 1 second. My dad did a lot of wrong, and I stood by his side no matter what because at the end of the day, he was my dad. But I was always aware that some of the things that he did was wrong. Like that, just it happens to people. And it's so hard to distinguish the two. Again, not a doctor, not a therapist, none of that. But again, these are things that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting, man, because you're right. I am not intelligent enough for that conversation. I can't relate at all, to be honest. So that's why I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through it to really understand.
I think what's really interesting though is when you see the Vince McMahon documentary though,
Mhm.
a lot of people, you know, they stood by Vince's side,
For sure.
obviously, but it was taped prior to the allegations coming out, and
then
obviously,
once the allegations did roll around, you've seen him step away from the documentary, and then the only person you didn't was Bruce.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but the CM Punk portion,
Mhm.
I don't need a father. I already have one.
Yeah.
And I do think in the workplace,
Mhm.
not just in wrestling, but in general, in a workplace, I think some companies do this thing where it's like, we're such a family atmosphere.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Did your cat just meow?
Yeah, did you hear him?
Yeah, that was so funny. Just dude, literally behind your back, the cat just goes meow.
Everybody, this is Mufasa.
Mufasa.
Mufasa, come here. There he is.
Part of the Ango show.
Yeah, when I used to do my live streams by myself, everybody called him King Moof.
King Moof in the
King
chat.
Everybody drop it. King Moof, baby.
King Moof. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say though, in the corporate world, there are so many companies that are like, oh, family atmosphere, family business, family. You know, we have a family culture, and then it's like some bosses try to talk to you like they are your father, and it's like, no, you're my fucking boss. Chill the fuck out,
bro. And that's kind of like if you've listened to the Undertaker ever talk about Vince McMahon, he's always said he's like another father to me.
Yeah.
Same with John Cena, he's like another dad. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
that's why I found this interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's where the Stockholm syndrome part of it comes from.
Yeah.
Because again, he's somebody who has done so. I mean, look at the way he booked the Undertaker. Look at the way he booked John Cena. These are two guys that were done great by Vince McMahon. And then you have somebody like CM Punk who's like, yeah, no, I'm good on that. I don't need a father. I already got one. Like, yeah, that's a guy who he knew the difference. He knew where the line was. That's Myra. I really like this super chat.
Yeah, shout out to Myra, the 1999 out of nowhere. Very, very good. I mean, you literally had to make me think, so I appreciate that. Shout out to Myra. Nelson Quills. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. Probably
Here
not.
We
go. Excuse me. $1.99. Hey guys, what you think of AJ versus Penta at Mania? So, I love the idea of it. I have no problem with them having a singles match whatsoever.
No.
If you guys remember my Royal Rumble predictions, I literally predicted Penta and AJ kicking off the match. However, I still think we get a 6-man ladder match.
Yes, I think you can't go away from that right now. I think we're too deep into it. There's already enough story being told there. between Ludwig, Penta, Pete Dunne, Sheamus, Braun Breaker, and Penta, and everything's kind of corresponding. And now even with Braun Breaker throwing in the subtle hint with AJ last week, so I think you could see AJ enter that match.
Yeah, I think AJ being involved in the title picture would be cool. I think it has to be a multi-man match.
Yes.
The goal should be to get as many people on the WrestleMania card as possible. Do that with your mid-card titles. I always remember Zack Ryder winning the IC title.
WrestleMania 32.
What a moment.
That was, was him sitting on the ladder.
And what's really, really cool, though, is when you do the multi-man ladder match, it justifies Braun Breaker not being pinned or submitted. So I like the idea of this. And Penta doesn't need to win. AJ doesn't need to win. If you want Sheamus to win, you can. If you want Ludwig to win, you can. You can literally pick anybody. It's not about Penta going to WrestleMania and winning, but it's allowing Penta to be in a large stake, high stake match
on the grand stage.
Yes, and honestly, if you want to kick off night one with a banger, this is how you do it. And if you get AJ, we'll see what happens with AJ tonight on Raw. But if you get AJ on Raw, teasing something about the Intercontinental Championship, which I could be wrong, but I don't recall AJ ever being the IC title holder.
No, he never held it.
I remember, obviously, we know that he won the US title and the WWE Championship. But if AJ were to win the Intercontinental Championship, then you could set up that singles feud between him and Penta. And that would obviously satisfy a lot of people as well. So I think it's better for them both to be in a multi-man match, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Agreed.
So shout out to Nelson for the super chat. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude today's live stream. Thank you to everybody who has joined us. Shout out to everybody who dropped the super chat. So many of you guys really came through in the chat. The viewership on these live streams have been incredible. I know I was really excited to talk today after the weekend. Obviously, just a lot of great things happening in professional wrestling. Tonight's Raw should be a big one. The chat did say that AJ has been IC champion. That was in 2020. Okay. Dude, I don't even remember that.
I know. So that tells you everything you need to know.
Let me see. AJ Styles, IC champion. Just a quick Google search. June 12th, 2020. He held it for 71 days.
Okay.
Wow, he is a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah, because he won the tag titles with Omos, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who did he beat for the IC title?
Hold on.
Dude, I do not remember this at all.
AJ Styles won the WWE Intercontinental Championship June 12th, 2020, and held it for 71 days until August 22nd. Who did he beat?
It was during the COVID era.
Yeah.
He won it in a tournament.
What?
That's what they're saying in the chat. It was during COVID, which is why I'm not going to remember it, because the COVID era of wrestling.
I'm just so locked out from that.
Yeah.
Like going back to that time sucks. The only thing that I genuinely remember from that time is Roman Reigns and that whole situation.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest. Yes, he beat Daniel Bryan.
Wow.
Yeah.
He lost the title to Jeff Hardy. Why do I not remember Jeff Hardy?
COVID?
Jeff Hardy. AJ
Jeff Hardy
Styles.
was a part of. He was around during that time?
August 21st, 2020. I just pulled it up on YouTube. Hold on. I do not recall Jeff Hardy ever holding this version of the IC title. That is crazy.
Wait, for real?
Yeah. This was the Thunderdome era. I would share my screen, but unfortunately, WWE would copyright me.
Yeah, that's copyright.
Wow, Jeff Hardy really did win.
No fucking way, dude.
Okay, so hold on. Jeff Hardy, IC title 2020. And then Sami Zayn defeated Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles.
Ladder match. I do remember that.
That I remember.
Yes, that is what I remember at Clash of the Champion. Yes. That makes sense.
Holy shit.
Dude, there's a whole timeline that I forgot.
It just goes to show. I mean, COVID was such a forgettable time, not just in general, not just in wrestling, but also in general. Obviously, that was stressful times, and it's really fucking terrible. So, yeah. All right, guys, that's it. It is February 10th, 2025. It's almost 2 p.m. Very, very good stream today. Thank you guys. Make sure you guys subscribe to Billy on YouTube at Billy TKO. Shout out to everybody for the super chats. Thank you again. Everybody who liked the stream, thank you again. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk Raw and whatever else we got. Just a quick little thing that I want to mention, and I saved it for the end for the reason. There are rumors that with NXT talent being called up to the main roster, there are rumors that potentially more cuts could be happening. So, with that being said, make sure you're subscribed, because if anything does come up, especially in regards to that, we're going to have you updated. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Peace.